It was the year 2187, in the bustling metropolis of Neo San Francisco. Towering spires of neon-reed steel thrust into the clouds, their reflective surfaces catching the light of a dozen orbital outposts. In the narrow streets below, crowds thronged together in a restless tide, hurrying from one day's work to the next. Airbikes zipped between suspended walkways, darting past colossal banners that advertised the latest cutting-edge gadgetry. Cities had evolved over centuries, but the old soul of humanity remained. People still desired companionship, still yearned for belonging. Ethan Cole lived on the edge of that swirling world, perched in a small apartment located on the 78th floor of an aging complex known as the Redwood Towers. Though overshadowed by more modern skyscrapers, Redwood Towers bore a hint of antiquated charm, with decorative wood-grain paneling in the corridors and sporadic bursts of greenery. Ethan was a man of moderate height and average build, notable mostly for his keen brown eyes and carefully styled dark hair, a relic of better days. His life was quiet, almost to the point of lonely. Each morning, he sipped synthetic coffee while reviewing designs for orbital habitats, a vital job in this era of advanced space exploration. Despite his successes, he maintained a cautious distance from the world, content with only minimal social contact. It was not that Ethan disliked people. Rather, he had been disappointed too many times. Work overshadowed his life, friendships disintegrated from lack of mutual effort, and romantic prospects came and went without leaving a lasting impression. He was good at designing orbital structures, but poor at building the foundation of real human connections. Sometimes he told himself that was okay. Other times, at night, he wondered if he might quietly slip into the ranks of those lost souls who simply drifted, unmoored, through the neon corridors. One day, as he scrolled through the net in a moment of idle curiosity, an advertisement caught his eye. Neopets, the perfect answer to your solitary nights. Order now for a life-changing companion experience. The ad promised a robot companion, elegantly engineered, capable of responding to verbal commands and simulating genuine affection. Intrigued, and perhaps a little tipsy from a glass of aromatic synth wine, Ethan clicked the order button. He had always found robotic pets endearing, with their unwavering loyalty and meticulously programmed empathy. The order form was straightforward, but something about it felt too slick, too pushy. The site was affiliated with NovaGen Corp, a major biotech and robotics conglomerate. NovaGen had soared to prominence over the last few decades by selling advanced personal assistants, integrated biotech enhancements, and, more controversially, artificially grown humanoids used in specialized labor fields. Yet the guarantee on the advertisement boasted a non-sentient, perfectly safe, biologically simulated companion. Ethan reasoned that if the product really was non-sentient, it wasn't ethically questionable. Perhaps it would be nice to come home and have something greet him with warmth, even if that warmth was artificially generated. He filled in his address, paid an outrageous sum of credits, and leaned back, feeling a touch of guilt. The immediate sense of buyer's remorse flickered in his chest. Yet, as he studied the confirmation message, he couldn't help imagining a bright, eager presence padding about his apartment, someone, or something, to keep him company while he worked late into the night. He set the matter aside, telling himself that, at worst, he would simply return the item if it turned out to be a dud. The days passed uneventfully. Ethan remained swamped with orbital engineering tasks, reviewing hollow schematics for a future habitat set to orbit Venus. His diet became a mix of ration bars and takeout noodles, each meal consumed in near silence. The Redwood Towers swelled with the hum of life around him, but he lived in a bubble, unaware of the undercurrents that churned behind the veneer of NovaGen's glittery ads. Late in the afternoon of the promised delivery date, a shipping drone buzzed near his balcony. Ethan glanced up from a half-finished blueprint and saw a squat container suspended by 4 rotating fans. With a whine, the drone lowered it onto the balcony's landing pad. The container bore the NovaGen insignia, gleaming silver under the city's neon horizon. Ethan hurried to the door, typed a signature code into the drone's interface, and watched it whir away, leaving him alone with his newly arrived pet. The container looked larger than he expected for a robotic animal. He frowned, momentarily worried. Perhaps they had included extra packaging or additional modular pieces. He knelt and pressed the activation panel on the sealed lid. A hiss of escaping air sounded, accompanied by the faint beep of electronics. The lid retracted, revealing the silhouette of a tall figure crouched inside. Before Ethan could process what he was seeing, she stirred. A slender, graceful hand reached out, finding the rim of the container. Then she rose. Her skin was a delicate shade of shimmering green, lit from within by an otherworldly glow. A curtain of dark hair cascaded around a face with high cheekbones and large, ebony eyes. She wore a snug outfit of glossy black material, accentuating her lithe limbs. Her expression was uncertain, as though she was bracing herself for an unknown reaction. Ethan froze, heart pounding, as though reality had twisted in that single moment. This was not a robotic pet. This was a woman, an alien woman. He had never seen a living, breathing alien in the flesh, nor had most of humanity. But there she stood, blinking, trying to find her voice. Her lips parted, and she spoke in a melodious tone that straddled the line between curiosity and caution. "Ethan Cole?" she asked, her accent heavy with unfamiliar inflections. "Yes." Ethan managed, though his throat felt as dry as a Martian plain. Who are you?" She stepped out of the container, nearly stumbling. With surprising agility, she caught herself against the balcony railing. Up close, her green skin showed subtle patterns, faint spirals that shimmered in the waning light. "My name is Zeva," she said, in halting English. "They told me I was to be your companion. They said, you paid for me." Ethan's mind reeled. This was wrong, on every level. He reached for the shipping manifest, scanning the small print. The text described a neo-companion, guaranteed to be docile and fully obedient. But the woman before him was clearly frightened, clearly self-aware. "I didn't order this," he said, voice trembling with shock. "I mean, not you specifically. I thought I was buying a robotic pet. A small creature, not a—" He trailed off, uncertain how to even phrase the confusion swirling within him. Zeva's gaze hardened. She seemed to weigh the sincerity in his words, her eyes narrowing as she studied his face. Then, something in her posture softened. She turned to peer at the city skyline, a faint shiver running through her shoulders. "They told me I was to serve a human," she said quietly, "because my species is no longer free. We are sold as property." Tears glimmered in her dark eyes. "But I will not be a toy. I have nowhere else to go." Ethan swallowed. He felt a powerful surge of indignation, though tempered by disbelief. "NovaGen told you that?" he asked. "They just took you from your people?" She nodded, looking stricken. "And sold me, under the guise of a neo-pet. We are called the Alari," she continued, "my people. We were once free, on a world far from here. But the GTC came, forging trade deals, claiming to uplift our society." Her lips quivered. "They dismantled our way of life, took our resources, and sold us under the facade of engineered servants. Many humans do not even realize we are truly sentient." Ethan's mind flashed to rumors he had heard in shadowy corners of the net. Whispers of black market alien trafficking, of corporate conspiracies bridging the stars. He had dismissed them as wild speculation. Now he realized the horrifying truth. He took a few calming breaths, then held out a hand in an attempt to soothe her. I'm sorry," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I won't hurt you. We'll figure out how to fix this." Though uncertainty lingered in her eyes, Zeva slowly took his hand. Her touch was cool, her fingers delicate. They stood there, wordless, for several long moments, as if forging a bond in the hush of that neon-lit balcony. The shipping container hissed and sealed itself, having completed its duty, leaving them both with an unspoken awareness that something momentous had begun. That night, Ethan cleared out his small living area for Zeva. She insisted on sleeping near a window, longing, perhaps, for a glimpse of the sky that reminded her of home. The following morning, Ethan tried to contact NovaGen for an immediate return, or at least some explanation, but was met with layers of automated messages and circular disclaimers. The call eventually routed him to a specialized department of NovaGen. A woman with a crisp corporate tone answered. "Thank you for your call. Have you found our Neo-companion unsatisfactory, Mr. Cole?" "Satisfactory," he repeated, anger swelling. "This is a living, sentient being. I was under the impression I was buying a non-sentient robotic pet." I want a refund, and I want to ensure her safety. There was a pause, an icy silence before the woman responded. Sir, I assure you, our product meets all regulatory guidelines. If you wish to return the item, place it back in its container, and we will schedule a pickup within 5 business days. As for any concerns regarding sentience, I am afraid the contract you signed relinquishes ownership disputes to NovaGen's internal mediation system. We appreciate your cooperation. Ethan felt his heart pound with shock and disgust. No, he said, voice taut. I'm not giving her back to you. The line went silent again. When the woman spoke once more, her voice had lost its veneer of politeness. That would be a breach of contract, Mr. Cole. NovaGen will take all necessary steps to reclaim its property. Good day. She hung up. Ethan was left staring at the calm, fresh waves of anxiety washing over him. He had inadvertently stepped into something monstrous. NovaGen was so powerful that trying to stand against them felt akin to tilting at windmills. But he looked over at Zeva, who stood across the room, arms crossed protectively around herself. She watched him carefully. He saw in her eyes both dread and the faint glimmer of hope that he might save her from returning to captivity. He sighed, struggling to keep his composure. We'll figure this out, he promised. I'm not going to let them take you. Zeva's nod was small, yet she straightened her back, as if the promise gave her fresh resolve. Over the next day, they tried to live quietly, ignoring the dire threat from NovaGen. Ethan learned bits of Zeva's language, picking up simple words like Cora, meaning heart, and Vel, meaning sky. She possessed a gentle curiosity, frequently tapping on his hollow displays to see diagrams of orbital platforms. He discovered she was quick to understand technical concepts, as though her mind was wired to adapt. For her part, Zeva seemed to appreciate his willingness to learn about her, though an undercurrent of tension remained, born of her uncertain future and the knowledge that NovaGen would not let the matter rest. On the second night, a dreaded knock sounded on Ethan's apartment door. He froze, carefully signaling to Zeva to remain quiet. Peering through the door's digital viewer, he saw 2 uniformed corporate enforcers standing in the hallway. Their attire bore the distinct NovaGen crest on the shoulder. One was tall and broad-shouldered, the other leaner, but with a steely glint in his eyes. Each wore a sidearm, indicating that this was not a casual visit. Ethan's heart hammered. He found his voice, though it felt strained. Who is it? He called, masking his trembling. NovaGen Security, came the response. We have a warrant to recover corporate property belonging to NovaGen. Please open the door. The words sank like iron in Ethan's stomach. Zeva hurried over, her eyes wide with panic. Ethan pressed a reassuring hand against her arm. I can't just let them take you, he whispered. We need to get out of here. But your home, everything you own, she murmured. He gritted his teeth, casting a quick glance out the window. The Redwood Tower's internal network was sure to be monitored, but maybe he could slip away using some of the service corridors. He pointed to the back entrance near the maintenance area. We'll go that way, he said. Hurry. Without waiting for further knocks, Ethan and Zeva dashed to the seldom-used service exit. It was an older building design, so the corridors were cramped, lined with cables and exposed piping. He led her to a dimly lit hallway that twisted downward. They could hear the enforcers forcing the main door behind them. The shriek of splitting metal told them the enforcers had no qualms about property damage. Breathless, they reached a small exit that opened onto a side alley near the building's foundation. The city's neon-laced nightlife enveloped them in a harsh, pulsing glow. Ethan pulled his hood low to conceal his face. Zeva attempted to hide her emerald complexion, but it was impossible to entirely hide the alien hue. They slipped into the crowds, weaving between late-night revelers, transient workers returning from evening shifts, and throngs of tourists gawking at the glittering spires overhead. Now and then, the reflection of flashing signs illuminated Zeva's face, making Ethan worry they would be spotted. But Neo-San Francisco's throng was notoriously indifferent. Most people focused only on their own business. The pair vanished into the labyrinth of a city that consumed them without question. They found a temporary haven in the industrial sector near the old harbor. Warehouses, battered by the salt air and overshadowed by the city's ever-expanding development, offered pockets of solitude. Ethan knew a small research outpost there, run by an acquaintance, Dr. Mira Wong, a brilliant scientist who specialized in exobiology. He had once collaborated with her on a habitat design project, and she was known for her empathy toward alien species. If anyone might help them understand Zeva's predicament and confirm her true origins, it would be Dr. Wong. They reached the outpost in the dead of night. The exterior lights flickered uncertainly, reflecting off puddles from a recent rain shower. Ethan pressed the door buzzer. A long pause followed. He glanced over his shoulder, on edge, but no one seemed to be following them. Finally, the door slid open to reveal a woman with short, silvery hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Dr. Wong wore a rumpled lab coat and carried a large mug of black coffee. She took one look at Ethan, then at Zeva, and her brows rose in surprise. "Ethan Cole," she said in a low voice. "It's been years. What is going on here?" "Long story," Ethan said, forcing a jittery smile. "I need your help, Mira. This is Zeva. She's not from Earth." Zeva bowed her head politely, words failing her. Dr. Wong's eyes glimmered with a flicker of scientific curiosity and compassion as she stepped back, letting them into the research outpost. Once inside, the hum of specialized equipment provided a strange but comforting background noise. The space was cluttered with half-assembled scanners, containment units, and rows of vials containing alien microflora. Dr. Wong guided them to a small side room and offered them seats. Her gaze flicked to Zeva's green skin with a serious, discerning look. "I can see she's not human," Dr. Wong said, setting her coffee aside. "Tell me everything you know." Ethan exhaled, recounting the ordeal, the unexpected delivery, NovaGen's involvement, and Zeva's admission that her people, the Alari, were being trafficked by the GTC under false claims of being engineered companions. Dr. Wong listened with rapt attention, her expression shifting from disbelief to indignation. When Zeva added details of how her homeworld had been dominated by corporate infiltration, Dr. Wong's fists tightened around her mug. Finally, Dr. Wong placed a gentle hand on Zeva's wrist. "I believe you," she said quietly. "I've seen scattered evidence that certain conglomerates might be involved in unethical dealings off-world. But you're the first living proof I've encountered of a sentient alien being forcibly sold on Earth. This is monstrous." A wave of relief crossed Zeva's face as she realized Dr. Wong was an ally. Ethan felt a small measure of hope. "What do we do now?" he asked. "NovaGen wants her back. We can't just hand her over." Dr. Wong's eyes gleamed. "We need evidence, undeniable proof, that NovaGen is complicit in trafficking. Otherwise, they'll bury any claims as conspiracy theories. Even if we run to the authorities, we risk them siding with a megacorporation. We need documents, logs, and all the data that NovaGen keeps hidden under trade secrecy." Ethan nodded, thinking about the advanced systems he had once glimpsed at NovaGen's main offices. "They might have heavily encrypted servers," he said. "I don't know if we can hack them from the outside. But I do have an access code. My job sometimes requires me to interface with corporate project data. That might get us a foot in the door." Zeva watched them both, a hint of steel entering her gaze. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said. "I cannot stand idle while my people remain enslaved. We must act quickly, for they will continue to expand these operations as they have on my world." Encouraged by her determination, Dr. Wong guided them through the labyrinth of her research station, showing them an old but serviceable infiltration rig. Its specialized hardware could circumvent standard encryption if given partial authorized credentials. They started planning how best to break into NovaGen's secure data, aiming to uncover proof of not only Zeva's origins, but also any larger conspiracy involving the Galactic Trade Consortium. They worked until the early hours of the morning, meticulously discussing infiltration routes. Dr. Wong had a contact within NovaGen's central facility, someone who might discreetly allow them access to the building. Once inside, Ethan could plug into a terminal with his partial clearance. Dr. Wong's infiltration rig would handle the rest, searching for hidden project files referencing the Alari, their homeworld, and any dealings with the GTC. It was a risky plan, fraught with potential pitfalls, but none of them saw a better path forward. Exhausted, they agreed to catch a few hours of sleep in the outpost before attempting the infiltration that very night. The next evening, shrouded in caution, they made their way through San Francisco's busy avenues, heading toward NovaGen's formidable tower. The building soared above the city, reflective surfaces glinting like the scales of some mechanical leviathan. Dr. Wong's contact, a night shift technician named Reiko, met them by a discreet side entrance. Nervously, Reiko checked over her shoulder, then swiped a keycard. "I can't believe I'm letting you in," she whispered, voice trembling. "But if even half of what Mira told me is true, this has to come out." They entered a hushed corridor lined with polished metal panels. Security cameras dotted the ceiling at intervals, their lenses rotating with quiet mechanical whirs. With Reiko's guidance, they slipped past the staff elevator, avoiding the main lobby. The atmosphere crackled with tension. Ethan held Zeva's hand, feeling her tremble at every echo of footsteps. Dr. Wong carried a compact case containing the infiltration rig. At last, they reached a data archive room deep within the tower. Reiko used a second keycard to bypass security protocols, then waved them inside, glancing at Zeva with astonishment. "Good luck," Reiko muttered, before hurrying away to avoid suspicion. They stepped into a cold, white-lit chamber lined with data storage pods. The hum of machines filled the air like static. Ethan approached a central terminal, keying in his personal code. The console emitted a chime, validating his credentials for access to Orbital Habitat Project data. He pressed a hidden toggle that Dr. Wong had installed into the infiltration rig, plugging the device into a secondary port. Data soared across the holoscreen. Dr. Wong navigated the interface at rapid speed, diving into subdirectories well beyond Ethan's normal clearance level. The infiltration rig worked its magic, unraveling encryption layers. Zeva hovered nearby, her gaze flicking anxiously between Ethan and Dr. Wong. Time felt painfully slow, each second a potential invitation for security to discover them. Finally, Dr. Wong's eyes lit up. "I found references to Project Menagerie," she said, voice trembling with a blend of triumph and horror. "It links NovaGen to an off-world branch of the GTC, shipping life forms from multiple alien species. They're documented as bioengineered companions, but the files clearly reference the real name of Zeva's species, the Alari." Zeva inhaled sharply, leaning closer as Dr. Wong opened file after file. Graphic images, shipping manifests, and corporate memos scrolled by, each more damning than the last. "This is it," Ethan whispered, adrenaline surging. "This proves they're trafficking actual living beings, passing them off as synthetics or genetically engineered creatures. The authorities can't ignore this." A beep jolted them. Red text filled the screen. "Security breach detected. Initiating lockout." The infiltration rig's program beeped in alarm. Dr. Wong cursed under her breath, tapping frantically at the console. "They're shutting us down. I'll try to copy as much as I can." Within seconds, an alarm shrieked through the data archive. The overhead lights shifted to an urgent shade of red, casting the chamber in a foreboding glow. "Go, go," Ethan urged, gripping Zeva's hand. Dr. Wong yanked the device free from the terminal, verifying the files were at least partially copied onto a storage crystal. They sprinted for the corridor, hearts pounding in unison. Security drones began to swarm from hidden alcoves, scanning the environment with sharp beams of light. The hiss of mechanical joints accompanied the drone's approach, each fitted with tranquilizer guns, or worse. Dr. Wong clutched the infiltration rig to her chest and followed Ethan and Zeva, who navigated the labyrinth with growing desperation. In a breathless chase, they darted through side halls, ducking under blasts of energy from the drones. The walls flashed with danger indicators. Rounding a corner, Ethan found a small maintenance shaft leading downward. "This way," he yelled, pulling Zeva inside. Dr. Wong followed, her face pale but determined. They descended into the tower's infrastructure levels, a maze of pipes, electrical conduits, and industrial scaffolding. The shriek of alarms echoed through the metallic corridors, adding to the suffocating tension. At last, they stumbled into a maintenance bay near the ground floor. Through a half-fogged window, they saw the glimmer of city lights just beyond an automated loading dock. They pried open the dock's hatchway, hearts pounding. A moment later, they emerged into the neon-streaked alley. The night air felt shockingly cold against their flushed skin. They hurried into the cover of darkness, leaving the tower and its sirens behind. They did not go back to Dr. Wong's outpost immediately. Instead, they took a serpentine route across half the city, ensuring they were not followed. Eventually, They ducked into a safe house belonging to an anti-corporate activism group that Dr. Wong occasionally supported. The members there, a patchwork band of hackers and social reformers, recognized the seriousness of the stolen data and offered them refuge. In a dimly lit back room, they finally reviewed the files Dr. Wong had managed to extract. The infiltration rig had captured volumes of incriminating material, transport logs listing thousands of Alari shipped to Earth, labeled as biosynth companions, correspondences between NovaGen executives and GTC representatives discussing long-term plans for Earth's gradual assimilation into the GTC fold. Ethan's gut twisted as he read the corporate speak that concealed an insidious scheme. The GTC had done this to Zeva's homeworld, then refined the approach for Earth. They were systematically embedding themselves in powerful megacorporations, eventually subjugating the planet to alien trade laws and control. "This is bigger than I imagined," Dr. Wong murmured, eyes glued to the screen. "It's not just about enslaving the Alari. They want to colonize Earth, or at least place it firmly under the GTC's thumb, exactly as they did with Zeva's people." Ethan reached for Zeva's hand, noticing how her expression flickered with sorrow and anger. She squeezed his fingers, voice trembling. "Now you see the truth," she said. "Your entire planet is on the verge of the same fate. The GTC uses your corporations as puppets, reaping power until the planet is fully under their dominion. Then there is no turning back." They realized they had in their possession the very evidence Earth's population needed to see before it was too late. But unveiling that evidence would be fraught with danger. NovaGen would stop at nothing to suppress the data and reclaim Zeva. Government officials might even be in league with the corporations. They needed to broadcast the information publicly across all channels, in a manner no one could simply delete or discredit. The activism group's lead technician, a gaunt man named Taro, suggested an audacious plan. They could hijack the city's news satellites for a brief window, sending out a massive data dump that would replicate itself across every major network on Earth. It would be illegal, and NovaGen's security apparatus would surely try to stop them. But if they succeeded, billions of people would see the truth in real time, igniting a global reckoning. That same night, while the city slumbered under blinking neon lights, Taro worked feverishly at a console array, orchestrating a satellite breach. Ethan and Zeva hovered nearby, going over the data, making sure everything was formatted for quick comprehension. Dr. Wong recorded a heartfelt introduction, explaining who Zeva was and what the GTC planned for humanity. In the background, Zeva offered a brief statement in halting English, speaking directly to the hearts of any who would listen. She described the tragedy that befell the Alari and begged humanity not to fall into the same trap. The tension in the safe house was electric. Each hiss of the air vents felt like a thunderclap. Ethan paced, occasionally glancing at the makeshift window, half expecting to see NovaGen enforcers storming in. Zeva steadied him with a calm presence, despite her own fear. Their bond had grown stronger, forged in shared danger. She was no longer simply an alien stranger caught in the wrong place. She had become his friend, someone who deserved life, liberty, and love. Finally, Taro looked up from the console, sweat beading on his brow. "We're live in 5 seconds," he whispered. "I've hijacked the old Earth SphereNet satellites. They'll scramble to lock us out, but we should have at least a few minutes." Ethan gave Zeva's hand one last squeeze, then nodded to Dr. Wong, who pressed the final command. Streams of data surged into the satellite array, bombarding every major news outlet with live footage, documents, images. A patchwork of major networks unwittingly relayed the signals, caught off guard by the infiltration. Across Earth, from the spires of Shanghai's floating neighborhoods to the dusty outskirts of the Mars Gate colony near Luna, screens lit up with the damning evidence of NovaGen's collusion with the GTC. The response was immediate. On the city streets, passers-by halted, gazing at the giant hollow billboards which suddenly flashed images of the Alari in captivity. Corporate disclaimers gave way to Dr. Wong's urgent voice explaining the alien infiltration. Zeva's face, radiant and green, filled the screens, a living testament to the deceit. Anger rose in the hearts of countless citizens. Protests erupted spontaneously, fueled by a sense of betrayal. Humanity, for all its vices, would not stand idle at the thought of being systematically enslaved. NovaGen frantically tried to shut down the broadcast, but Taro's infiltration route had replicated it on thousands of nodes. Government officials were forced to respond. Pressure mounted from the global community, demanding investigations and accountability. Meanwhile, Ethan, Zeva, Dr. Wong, and the activism group read the messages pouring in from every corner of Earth. Public sentiment was on their side, but the danger had not yet passed. Days of chaos followed. NovaGen's stock plummeted, its executives scrambled to deny any wrongdoing, and the GTC's local proxies found themselves under intense scrutiny by Earth's media. The unfolding scandal triggered a chain reaction. Ambassadors from advanced alien races, who had maintained only tentative contact with Earth, expressed shock that the GTC had gone so far, supporting forced servitude. Protests turned violent at times, with some misguided individuals lashing out at anything alien. But gradually, as the dust settled, it became apparent that the Ilari were victims deserving Earth's protection. The final blow came when the Earth Federation Council convened an emergency summit, summoning representatives from NovaGen, the GTC, and independent experts. Dr. Wong testified in person, bringing Zeva forward as undeniable proof of the trafficking ring. Ethan presented the stolen documents, meticulously explaining each point of data. The council's shock and outrage were palpable. The hearing ended with an unprecedented resolution. The Ilari were to be recognized as refugees, with rights and protections under Earth's interstellar accord. NovaGen faced crippling sanctions, and every known facility involved in illegal alien trade would be seized by the authorities. Zeva watched the proceedings from a secure vantage point within the council hall, wearing a formal robe that concealed her slender form but still showed her green hands and face. She trembled with nerves as the final resolution was read. Henceforth, the Ilari are free individuals, no longer subject to ownership or forced servitude. Any entity found violating this decree shall face the full extent of interplanetary law. Cheers erupted from the gallery, a jubilant chorus of humanity standing in solidarity with those they had once mistaken for mere objects. Tears flooded Zeva's eyes as the weight of freedom, long denied, settled onto her shoulders. She turned to Ethan, who wore a relieved smile despite the swirl of emotions. They exchanged a quiet embrace, each knowing how far they had come. Within weeks, ships carrying Ilari refugees began to emerge from the GTC's formerly hidden routes. Some had been imprisoned in cryostasis, others languished in clandestine camps. Now, with Earth's official condemnation of the GTC's methods, the floodgates opened for a massive rescue operation. Human relief agencies collaborated with the reeling NovaGen infrastructure, under strict oversight, to tend to the newly freed aliens. Ethan's life changed drastically in the aftermath. He left his old job of designing orbital habitats for NovaGen. Governments and independent organizations sought his skills, but under a more ethical framework. He and Zeva found themselves in high demand for interviews, documentaries, and scientific inquiries. Yet, they also craved a semblance of peace, a chance to breathe without the looming threat of corporate retribution. Dr. Wong continued her research at an official Earth Federation lab, dedicated to understanding and assisting displaced alien species. Her name became synonymous with exobiological compassion and ethical scientific exploration. Taro, the hacker hero, gained notoriety as well, but seemed content to vanish into the underground once the dust settled, leaving only a digital signature of gratitude. A month later, under a golden sunset on the now quiet shores beyond San Francisco's harbor, Ethan and Zeva walked side by side. Gentle waves lapped at the shore, carrying the faint scent of salt and promise. The city's skyline shimmered in the distance, a testament to the resilience of a world that could stand against corruption when united. Zeva had traded her cramped black suit for simple, comfortable clothing borrowed from supportive humanitarian groups. She allowed the breeze to caress her dark hair, her emerald skin glowing softly in the evening light. Ethan carried his shoes, letting the sand sift between his toes, marveling at how normal, how profoundly human, this moment felt despite the extraordinary events that had brought them here. "I never thought Earth would become my new home," Zeva said quietly, gazing at the distant gulls circling overhead. I always believed I would remain in captivity, or be discarded once I was no longer profitable. Ethan slipped an arm around her shoulders, a gesture of comfort and affection. Your arrival changed everything, for both of us, he said, voice warm with gratitude. You forced me to open my eyes, to see how complacent I had become. And together, we revealed the truth. None of this would have happened if we hadn't joined forces. She offered him a thoughtful smile, eyes glimmering with remnants of sorrow and a dawning sense of hope. I owe you my life. But more than that, I've learned what it means to fight for something beyond survival, something like freedom or family. They paused to watch the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in a tapestry of pink and gold. In the distance, silhouettes of passing ships reminded them that the fight was not entirely over. The GTC still existed, and other planets were likely under threat. But Earth had made a stand, forging a new precedent for interstellar relations. Ethan squeezed Zeva's hand gently. What do you want to do now? She lowered her gaze, the corners of her mouth curving into a tender smile. I want to help the Alari who are still lost, still scared. I want to share all I've learned about your people, and maybe help you all in return. I want to make sure no one, human or Alari, has to live in the shadows of fear. A breeze blew through her hair, and she closed her eyes. Ethan sensed a calm resolution settling over her. We have a future now, he said, echoing her thoughts. We can build something real, something honest. Not as a master and a companion, but as equals. Yes, she agreed softly, stepping closer. As partners, they fell into a comfortable silence, letting the rhythms of the waves fill the space where words had run dry. For a moment, the city lights, the global controversies, and the echoes of cosmic conspiracies seemed to recede. They were simply two souls, standing at the edge of a vast sea, daring to dream of a better tomorrow. At length, they turned back toward the city, hand in hand, their footprints tracing a path across the wet sand. Overhead, distant aircraft soared, perhaps carrying new arrivals from beyond Earth's atmosphere. This time, however, those arriving might be welcomed not as curiosities or commodities, but as fellow travelers in a shared cosmos. NovaGen, disgraced and under government receivership, would never again hold sway over Zeva or her people. The GTC's grip on Earth had been pried open by the relentless force of truth. The revelation had sparked fierce debate among world leaders, but it had also paved the way for alliances built on mutual respect rather than exploitation. Though the galaxy remained vast and filled with unknown perils, humanity had taken a firm step toward ensuring justice. And in that quiet, twilight moment, Ethan and Zeva felt the pulse of hope in every breath. Perhaps the road ahead held new challenges, new battles that would test their resolve. But for now, they clung to the knowledge that they had accomplished something profound. They had ignited the spark of freedom and saved countless lives from bondage. In each other's presence, they felt the warm glow of possibility, a reminder that, sometimes, the most unexpected of arrivals can open our eyes to the beauty of standing together against the darkness, forging a bond that would carry them across the stars. They walked on, hearts full, resolute in the knowledge that their story would not end in despair but in hope. And so, beneath the vast cosmic canopy, on the cusp of a new era for both humanity and the Alari, they chose happiness and possibility as their guiding lights. Indeed, from that day forward, neither Ethan nor Zeva would ever again walk alone.